As we get started, I just want to acknowledge that we're gathered today during a tough moment. Many people, including myself, are grieving the sudden and sensible cuts, freezes, terminations, and cancellation of funds and programs at the federal level, and that the current administration and Congress are taking very real bites out of the fruit of decades worth of work that support kids, farmers, and communities across America. So today's discussion is a chance for all of us to kind of grow in awareness and understanding of what this means for school meals, for farm to school, and the millions who are being abruptly impacted. Now, with that said, farm to school is an enduring movement going on for over 30 years now. And it's a movement that keeps putting one foot or maybe garden boot in front of the other towards the common good. And farm to school is a resilient lot of folks. And so we're really glad that y'all are here and that we're in this work together with you. So, let's keep that spirit alive and keep farm to school flourishing for another 30 years. On the agenda today, I'm just going to quickly review what farm to school is and about NFSN, do a quick recap of the farm to school movement, share a little bit more what's happening with the federal landscape. Then we'll jump right into our panel and Q&A following that. We are recording today's webinars, and we'll be sure to share that along with other links and information following the presentation. If you have a question, as a question rises for you, feel free to share that in the chat. And then if you have any technical difficulties, put that in the chat and we'll try to help resolve that as quickly as we can. So my name is Ryan Betts, and I'm a policy specialist with the National Farm to School Network, and really grateful for the presence of Sandy, Adeze, and Lindsay, who I'll introduce at length a little bit later. But NFSN has a vision of a strong and just food system for all, and we seek deep transformation towards that vision through farm to school and early care and education. And as a leader of this national movement, we advocate for policy systems and environmental change. We facilitate networking and movement building opportunities, and we offer professional development and resources for stakeholders. So what is farm to school? When we say farm to school, we're talking about activities that support the connection communities have with fresh, healthy food and local food producers, and the ways that children engage in learning about food and ag. There's no one defined program, but collectively farm to school collectively these activities empower children and their families to make informed food choices while strengthening the local economy, contributing to vital communities. And because farm to school uniquely sits at this intersection of numerous sectors, these cross-sectoral benefits include public health, education, economic development, and more. And as a result, kids win, farmers win, and communities win. And this connects directly with the policies that we'll be talking about today. Likewise, the same core elements extend to early care and education settings. At a critical time of development, Farm to ECE provides improved health environments and experiential learning to shape, very young children's development of taste preferences and lifelong healthy habits. And Farm to ECE also offers meaningful engagement opportunities for families and communities. So as a strategy for revitalizing community regional food systems, farm to school policy and programming provide a range of positive impacts. And research finds that farm to school benefits public health, education, equity, community development, and the environment. And I do want to highlight the farm to school's impact on economic development. Farm to school policy and programs strengthen connections within the food economy, and they provide increased economic activity in local communities and states. And through local values-based procurement, we see an increase in the number of school and producer relationships, as well as the diversity of procurement methods used by schools. And this in turn increases the social capital, which generates positive relationships amongst farmers with their schools, districts, families, and community members. And farm to school has been shown to create jobs. And for each dollar invested, it can stimulate an additional 60 cents to $2.16 of local economic activity. And farm to school is helping to change the narrative around school meal quality. These are real school lunches featuring local produce, and it seems every day there are more and more school food professionals in cafeterias across the country who are serving up healthy and delicious meals sourced from farms in their communities. So our network is composed of more than 20,000 members. We have nearly 200 partner organizations. I think that's grown to closer to 300 or 400 now. We have an advisory board and a small but mighty staff. And through this movement, in the 2022-2023 school year, we've seen that 74% of school food authorities report participating in school meals, which means 45.6 million students were touched by farm to school. Almost over 74,000 schools have included local foods on the menu, culminating into 1.8 billion spent on local foods. So we really see schools as the best places to spark thinking about how we all live together in communities. Farm to school meals and accompanying activities provide opportunities to understand how the food on our plates affect us, from the well-being that good nutrition gives our kids to the broader worlds of local economies, chronic disease prevention, environmental impacts, and more. And even better, when our kids learn about the hardworking farmers, fishers, and ranchers that feed us, schools become places that help us connect. They help us connect as parents, students, teachers, and neighbors to the land and to one another. So if we want to create a better, healthier food system for everyone, we must value and build intentional right relationships among all people in the farm to school journey in ways that help to manifest 100% of communities holding power in a racially just food system. So while the idea and practice of food education, school gardens, and local procurement in this country is centuries old, the seeds of the contemporary farm to school movement were sown over 30 years ago. And since then, it has grown into a flourishing, nonpartisan movement supported in bipartisan soils. So early leaders and practitioners knew the transformative powers that these seeds possess, and they nurtured them through vision and grit, establishing some of the first programs in California and Florida in the 90s, then expanding that to fertile ground in other states, and then like a rise zone formed a network in the mid-2000s. Then in the next 10 years, the roots of farm to school became even deeper and stronger, and new seeds were planted with companions. So both the USDA farm to school grants and the community eligibility provision were authorized in 2010. And CEP is part of the National School Lunch Program that offers free school meals to all students if a certain percentage of those students receive free and reduced price meals. And CEP and other universal school meals policies is a great companion plan, if you will, to farm to school because it reduces red tape for cafeteria staff, it provides financial stability, therefore increasing the literal time and capacity for school food professionals to invest in innovations like farm to school. Also throughout this decade, we saw farm to school expand to all 50 states, DC, US territories, the USDA farm to school census begins, NFSN convenes the Farm to ECE working group outlining a vision for the future of farm to ECE, and farm to ECE state policies begin to emerge. Now, in this decade, we really see farm to school state policies and offices take off. And just a side note, we're excited that our updated state policy handbook has been updated and is being released today. We've also seen an increase in state local food procurement incentives. An increase in state farm to school institutes, a movement for greening schoolyards and school food forests, the pandemic era universal free meals. And this experience really highlighted the urgency of moving away from fragile, centralized industrial food chains and toward a more resilient value chain in local and regional food systems. And I mean, can you remember when school food professionals made the cover of Time magazine? I mean, they're heroes, and it cannot be more evident that school meals and farm to school, they are not investments of waste. And then after these free waivers ended, we saw the expansion of the community eligibility provision and the states adopting values-aligned school meals for all. You know, there's great momentum now for school meals for all. Multiple polls at the national level, it's more than 60% of folks approve of this. And if you go to individual states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, it's above 80%. So this issue is bringing many people together, and this is a growing force that simply cannot be ignored. Then we saw the bumper crop of funding that is, or sadly was, USDA local food for schools, and then the addition of childcare. And y'all, this is just to name a few. So if I left something out, please forgive me. So it's 2025, and what is happening now? On one side, we're seeing states take the lead to reinstitute school meals for all. So 8 states now permanently provide school meals at no cost to students. And this year, New York and Oregon are on track to become the 9th and 10th states to pass school meals for all, both of which also these states have values aligned in local food, school food purchasing policies on the books. And many more states are passing bills that take these incremental steps towards school meals expansion, such as providing free breakfast, just as Arkansas did this past month. So these are steps in the right direction. And again, more fruit of a flourishing movement. At the federal level, however, we are dismayed by the news we're getting. First, we learned of Congress's proposed cuts to the National School Lunch Program, changing the parameters of CEP and income verification requirements for the free and reduced price lunch. And we also learned of the termination of the local food for schools and childcare program. So this, along with the many other cuts and freezes, is really prompting the question whether or not local food will survive Trump's USDA. As reported recently by Civil Eats, these USDA grants are meant to help producers and others in the supply chain overcome initial challenges like higher costs and complicated logistics that prevent regional growers from being able to compete with the large global companies that dominate a consolidated food system. So since the new Congress and executive administration, we have been flooded with a barrage of abrupt changes to the federal landscape. And as best we can, I want to take a couple of minutes to break down what's happening now and focus on what is having and has the potential to reshape school meals and farm to school and ECE at the federal level. So in Congress, in the House and Senate, they have passed bills for the first phase of budget reconciliation. And this process commits them to big cuts and mandatory spending that is already like on the books that has to be done. In the House, that means cuts are coming for $230 billion in ag and $330 billion in education, which is where programs like Farm to School Grant live. So the question is, what programs are these cuts going to be on the back of? The committee has to find the cuts from existing permanent programs. And in deciding how to make the numbers work, there's no way to do it without making massive, significant slashes. So one way to think of budget reconciliation is as if it's a restaurant. The chairman of the House Education Workforce Committee provided their suggestions of things to put on the menu. And on the menu are significant cuts to CEP and SNAP. For CEP, for example, it means that what's on the menu is $12 billion in cuts to the breakfast and lunch. And the proposal would make more than 24,000 schools across the country, serving more than 12 million children, no longer eligible to participate in CEP. So going back to our metaphor, Congress hasn't started making the dish yet, but it's on the menu. And Congress is going to have to order something soon. So we don't have the details on what the final order is, but we do know that these are the suggested cuts that are on the menu. And then as this has been happening, Congress recently averted a March 14th government shutdown, passing a resolution just to continue funding at the previous year's level, and we're still in 2024's funding levels. So this means that we will be looking at fiscal year 2026 to address any changes to things like farm to school grant appropriations. Finally, the Farm Bill is now 2 years overdue. With so much happening, who knows when it might move back to the front burner, let alone the stove. And in this atmosphere of cuts, we know that there will be significantly less funding, potentially affecting these other great companion plant programs like the local agricultural marketing program grants, crop insurance, SNAP, and more. Now, in the executive, the actions have been swift, decisive, and highly controversial. One of the first actions to be felt was the federal funding freeze. While some of these paused programs have resumed, like conservation programs, other government contracts have not, and farmers still affected have funding freeze litigation now in federal court. Along with these freezes, there was communication bans at agencies like the Centers for Disease Control, and farm to ECE efforts receiving CDC support were affected, causing confusion and uncertainty. And just a couple of weeks ago, we heard about the termination of LFSCC, $660 million from the USDA Commodity Credit Corporation, promised to schools and childcare providers to buy local foods from farmers, gone. So we'll talk more about this in the panel. And finally, because of the executive orders, we knew that there would be delays in proposed review for the fiscal year 2025 farm to school grants. However, we learned yesterday that the USDA is canceling these grant awards for this year altogether. So the Patrick Leahy Farm to School Grant Program is one of the only dedicated sources of funding to meet the growing demand, and I mean the growing demand of farm to school activities, ensuring expanded and therefore like ensuring expanded stable funding as well as improving access to the applicants builds on the success of our flourishing movement. So this cut really bites. And it is also a highly questionable move, as the Farm to School Grant Program is a congressionally authorized program with a minimum not $5, but $5 million in mandatory and annual funding. So we will be sure to keep partners informed as this news develops. We also learned yesterday that several of the USDA Farm to School staff that were terminated several weeks ago were recently reinstated. For how long, though, we don't know. And these staff include regional staff and grant administrators. Also in Congress, we're working again to reintroduce the Bipartisan Farm to School Act, working to strengthen it, to expand it, improve it, reduce barriers to accessing it, and increasing the program benefits to producers. And then it can't go without saying, and this isn't to sound any alarmist bells or anything, that as Congress is considering these massive, significant cuts to mandatory programs, it is not unrealistic where there could be a scenario where potentially farm to school grants could be one of the dishes on the menu. We don't know, but you can't rule it out. So these next two slides, I just want to kind of like help to kind of visualize what this funding has looked like over time. This is the USDA Farm to School Grant. We see that they're in the green at the bottom. There's the $5 million in annual mandatory appropriations. Then we get a little bit more on top with discretionary money that, we go to Congress, we say, hey, we'd love to see, this is a great program. We're really seeing these impacts. We would love some more funding on top of this to do more great things. You see that it's like slowly built. But then we start to see some shots across the bow with a decrease in funding in 2024 back to 2018, 2019 levels. And then, of course, just yesterday, we've seen that the Trump administration has totally just cut grant funding for this particular year. Now, I am going to show a next slide that is going to factor in the LFS, the Local Food for Schools and Childcare funding. This slide right now is in the tens of millions of dollars. The next slide is going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and it'll just demonstrate the incredible impact and magnitude of this funding. So, yeah, this graph really gets at the magnitude and the incredible like bumper crop of funding from for farm to school through local procurement. And again, these are the LFSCC funds were 100% purchasing for food. So in the moment that we find ourselves in, and to protect and preserve these wins for the farm to school movement, strengthening farm to school advocacy at the federal level is needed now, perhaps more than ever. So and for myself too, let's take a deep breath and let's talk about this. There's so much to digest, and we're really fortunate to have Sandy, Adeze, and Lindsay to help us chew on this. And just for some real quick introductions, Dr. Sandy Kerward is the recently retired State Director of School Nutrition Programs at the Virginia Department of Education, working to ensure that every Virginia student has equitable access to good, healthy food at school to enhance academic success and promote lifelong wellness. She's a former food service director for 15 years in school districts across California and successful in implementing farm to school programs, conversion to speed scratch cooking, and incorporating nutrition education and garden-based learning into classrooms. Our next panelist, Ms. Adeze Ngadi, the president and founder of Rex Child Care and Learning Center, opened in 1992 in Rex, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. Adeze is very active in the child care industry and is a one-time president of the Southern Crescent Child Care Association, a current member of the Georgia Child Care Association. She considers herself not just a child care provider, but an advocate for children. And she also works tirelessly searching for resources to help families and children, and is deeply committed to integrating fresh, local foods into early care and education. She's always instilled her roots into her programming as well as her garden and menu planning. And then lastly, Lindsay Aguilar is the director of Tucson Unified School District Food Services Department and has worked there for over 20 years. Tucson Unified currently operates CEP at all 87 of their schools and has a successful school garden and food literacy program. Lindsay currently serves on the School Nutrition Association Board of Directors, and she has a passion for school food nutrition and the important role of nutrition in education. So, y'all, thank you all so much for being here. Sandy, strengthening school food service, expanding school meal access, and increasing scratch cooking and meal quality with local foods has all steadily gained momentum, and it's blossomed into this culminating movement that, that's now facing significant cuts. Can you quickly just share how you've seen school meals and farm to school grow and develop over time?
Sure, Ryan. And thanks for all the food and farm metaphors. Love that. So when I became school nutrition director in 2001, my kids were just entering school, and I really wanted them to be in an environment that supported healthy eating. And how else better to do that than to become the school nutrition program director? I was able to introduce fresh, local, seasonal agricultural products into our school breakfast and lunch. Bringing in both fresh fruit and veggies was an entry point into initiating scratch cooking and integrating ag literacy and nutrition education into the cafeteria and eventually into the classroom. It's a natural and obvious connection, planning menus that integrate local seasonal crops into recipes and showcasing them on the salad bar with farmer and nutritional info messaging that adds really a fun and informative element to that. School gardens and student farms are a great way to enhance learning and connections for students, as well as staff and families. I was fortunate when I started, like you said, it was California. Rodney, what predated me, then myself, started Farm to School in California. I met Jim Churchill, who at the time worked with the Community Alliance of Family Farmers, and we navigated the procurement and operational issues together. And then also getting buy-in from internal stakeholders, superintendents, school principals, teachers, and curriculum developers was essential to creating events like Iron Chef, which really also engaged the student community. So, as you noted, there are a lot of advocates such as CAF, Ag Innovations, yourselves, National Farm to School Network, United Fresh Produce, which is now the International Fresh Produce Association, was really helpful with getting salad bars in schools. And then USDA came on the scene. So the support for Farm to School has grown exponentially, like you said, has really amplified the initiative with more resources, tools, and tricks of the trade that are available for all.
Thank you, Sandy. And thank you for helping to highlight just this exponential growth. Similarly, Adeze, farm to early care and education is gaining momentum. And, there's communities of support that are emerging to support farm to ECE. Childcare providers want to get good food to their kiddos. How have you seen integrating fresh local foods into ECE take root over time? And what have been the benefits that you've seen at your own center?
So when I started childcare in 1992, there were not many mentions of farm to school going on. I'm from Nigeria originally, and most of the food we ate in my household was in our garden in the back of the house. My mother planted a lot, so the extra property we had here, we started growing things. I found out the school age students enjoyed totally being out there planting. So at this time, we did not have any contacts or know what was going on in the national level or state level. But down the line, DECAL had trainings on caregivers promoting healthy eating. And we jumped into that, did that training. And from there, got some grants on developing our own wellness policies that we use. Looking at the childhood diseases, diabetes, different things, children with different disabilities and all of that, knowing that proper eating, proper choices was very much helpful in the growth of children. So we started doing all of that and following our policies. We met companies like Small Bites who came into the center and helped the children for testing the food, fresh food, food and fruits. We met CDC, we worked with them, we've done work with United Way, who showed us how children developed and were able to learn from healthy eating. So we were able to develop plans through all of that. Quality Care for Children was one of the partners, and we've had some showings with USDA, not directly, but getting grants from larger companies that deal with USDA. United Way of Atlanta, Health M, Health M Powers And currently we're working with Hand, Heart, and Soul project that is helping us develop plants and teaching children how to garden, fresh fruits, and all of that. The benefits of all of that is that we see that children are healthier. They come in there, they eat good breakfast, so they're willing, ready to learn. They're playing, they're not out there. We're not doing juices, fruit punches, and all of that. They're eating healthy fruits. And we do a lot of fresh and healthy choices here. So our staff were able to learn also how to intentionally teach children healthy living, encouraging breastfeeding. We do that here, and we teach lifelong lessons that help combat obesity and other diseases.
Awesome. Thank you so much for helping us to kind of understand the growth of farm to ECE and the benefits that you're seeing in your own community. So moving on to some of these cuts or proposed cuts, school food professionals continue to face challenges. And according to the most recent School Nutrition Association trends report, that one of the top challenges is like food costs. We see labor costs, equipment costs, et cetera. Sandy, could you maybe share a little bit more about how this interfaces with the community eligibility provision, how it works, and maybe what impact it has had on these challenges facing school meal professionals?
Yeah, the challenges aren't new, right? School nutrition has faced these challenges for forever. Post-pandemic, I think they were exacerbated even more. I can tell you though, on the bright side, that farm to school initiatives and farm to school activities are a way to help with some of those things. And one of the things when I transitioned to the Virginia Department of Education about 9 years ago, we really started working on workforce development and culinary training, along with local procurement initiatives and more scratch cooking. And that really has helped with some of the issues. Unfortunately, as you said, with these cuts, especially if the proposal for community eligibility provision goes from 25% to 60%, that will have devastating impacts. So CEP, as you mentioned, Ryan, is the community eligibility provision. It uses an ISP, which is the identified student percentage of students that are eligible for meals at no charge through means tested programs such as SNAP, TANF, migrant, homeless, and foster. In Virginia, this data comes through the Department of Social Services to the Department of Education, and then is pushed down to the school districts. So under the current guidelines, if you have a 25% ISP, then you can provide all meals to students without any further processing. That changed about 2 years ago when it was 40%. Schools are paid at the free rate. So if you take like the 25% times 1.6, then you're paid at about 40%. If your ISP is 62.5%, multiply that times 1.6, and that's the 100% of meals would be reimbursed at the free rate. So even under the current structure, not every school can serve meals at the 25% threshold, but at least they have that option, and there's a lot more flexibility with that. I'll say that my takeaway related to this, and I know you didn't ask for takeaways, but I'm going to give you a couple anyway, is that even though we don't know what the impacts to SNAP are going to be, I would really encourage you all to work with families to get to apply for benefits, because the SNAP benefits are mean tested, and that increases CEP eligibility. So not only does it provide for the families, but it also helps support their ability to get SNAP benefits, as well as increasing CEP eligibility, which is going to be even that much more important should these cuts go through.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, and if these cuts go through, I think it's like 24,000 schools would be affected, 12 million students. That's what our friends at the Food Research and Action Center have kind of pulled together. Lindsay, I just want to ask you a question, because I know your district is a CEP district at all your schools. what would be the direct impacts for you and for other similar schools in Arizona and other states?
Yeah, so for Tucson Unified, as you mentioned, we're 100% CEP at all 87 of our schools. So with the proposed cuts to CEP going down to 25% for that ISP, we would lose 39 schools that would no longer be eligible for CEP. Financially, estimate that's about a $3.5 million reduction in our reimbursements that we would receive. So, and also we would get reduced meal participation. We know with CEP, we have more students eating with us. We have a 10% increase this year alone at lunch. That's on top of last year's increase because we started 100% last January. So less students eating, obviously less access, equitable access to our students. We go back in time to lunch debt and having to have our, district meal policy for what we do with students that don't have money on their account, but need to eat while they're at school. So, in my opinion, obviously, it's the unfortunate part is we've made so much positive momentum with the collaboration of all of these programs with CEP and combining it with our, farm to school programs and the funds that we're receiving. So it's like going back in time instead of continuing the positive trajectory that school meal programs and farm to school have been on. So the impact is huge. This was our first start of school with all 87 schools on CEP. And I've never received the positive feedback from our administrators and district leadership with how seamless services were and just the overall environment of mealtime at our schools, right? With no stress, with students being able to eat if they want to eat, getting, having access to the nutrition and the quality meals that we provide, parents not having to deal with applications, administrators not having to worry teachers. I mean, it hits, we are an integral part of the school day. And so we should be treated as an integral part of the school day, in my opinion. So this definitely would be a huge impact to school meals and students, receiving those meals.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay, for sharing all of that. And I think we also know that for the states that are that have on their own have instituted school meals for all policies, that they would be impacted by CEP as well. In the interest of time, I want to transition to the early care space and go back to you, Adeze. Child care and early care and education like really provides incredible benefits for the students and for our communities. And research indicates that for every dollar, this is astounding. For every dollar invested in high quality early education, it can yield a return of $4 to $16 through improved life outcomes. So, and that's just one way to measure it, But how do investments like SNAP or SNAP Ed, how do they help to contribute to the childcare scene and support early childhood education providers and teaching nutrition or promoting healthy eating habits among young children?
Well, as you know, education and knowledge is very important. Parents get to, through SNAP Ed, are able to understand exactly how to deal with the dollar amount that they're getting. They maximize the use of their dollars. The parents also learn how to invest in healthy choices for food and other things like exercise and things they can do. There's a lot of exposure to healthy eating, which in turn improves quality of life of the community. So the children come in ready to learn. They've eaten well, so they're focused. They're not hungry. They're not being affected by processed or whatever they've eaten. So these are very helpful. So cutting off the SNAP Ed and SNAP and all of that is going to affect quite a whole lot of people, not just a few. You have parents who are dependent on that. Even the staff that you have in early childhood centers and programs, They're not very highly paid. Some of them complement their fee, the little salary they make with the SNAP, and all those programs that they receive. So this will affect the ripple effect from the parents, children, the whole community, the farmers who were not able to buy from too.
Yeah, thanks for helping to provide that that just that perspective and that kind of awareness and just a deeper understanding of these impacts and, like as you said, the ripple effects. I know one of the other big programs that wasn't proposed to be cut, but just was cut, was local food in schools and child care program. The first round, I think it was started in 2020, 2021. There's $200 million. And in this second round that got approved right before the change in administrations, it would have provided 660 million in local purchasing for K-12 schools and ECE. And in news clip after news clip, and we've tracked at least 90 so far. We've heard from folks across the country and the political spectrum, in red states, blue states, purple states, of the huge benefits that LFSCC has been providing. So in terms of supporting local economies and food systems, I want to turn over to you, Lindsay, because y'all participate in this or participated in it. Can you explain the significance of LFS for your food service program, which I think in Arizona is called Try It Local?
Yes, that's correct. So Arizona, we have Try It Local. That has been a tremendous impact in our state in general, increasing local food purchases for school meal programs in Arizona and across other states that are actively using the funds. Specifically for Tucson Unified, we are up 5.5% of our local produce purchases for this year compared to last year. So currently 12.5% of the produce that we purchase is coming from local farms. And for us, local farms is within a 60 to 90 mile radius with our farm institution network that we have in Southern Arizona. So we've made tremendous growth. These funds have been an integral, component of us being able to increase to that 5.5%. We do crop planning every November through January for the following school year. So we've already completed our crop planning. So obviously I'm committed to local foods in our schools. So despite not having those funds, which, we're counting pennies in our, current situation of financial sustainability. So it's going to make it extremely difficult to continue that goal of, continuing to increase our local food purchases. But we've been able to offer things like raspberries on our menu. We would never be able to afford to offer our students fresh raspberries in our school meal program just because of the cost per serving. All kinds of blood oranges. These are all little local canary melons. Like we were able to expand, pivot quickly and work with our local providers to start increasing our purchases beyond what we had planned with our crop planning for this year. So the quality is better. Our students, greatly enjoy the food. We do education component on our serving lines so that the students can learn where these local foods are coming from. We've utilized our social media to communicate to our stakeholders these efforts that we're doing. It's complemented with our school garden program and food literacy program, again, tying it all together on the serving line. So like I said, this has been a huge win for increasing local food on school meal programs menus because of primarily the financial component, right? I would love to be able to purchase even more, but it truly does come down to, managing the financial aspect of, the reimbursement that we're getting. So these have been, and just continuing to build upon those relationships with our local farms and our community and what that does, for our economy and our farming community is tremendous. And having a stable buyer like a school district, we know how many meals we're going to serve every day. We know what our, ordering is going to be. It's a consistent, stable income for our local farms when you start that partnership. And I've seen it grow in Arizona. I mean, like I said, we've been active in Farm to School and Tucson Unified for a decade, but seeing new schools across Arizona that haven't done it, be able to do it and get excited about it, has been really, wonderful to see. So it definitely has had, like I said, a huge impact on just the volume of what we've been able to do. And so now it's, going to be quite a bit more challenging to continue. We've got a group of passionate people on my team, and we're committed to continuing our efforts, but it makes it extremely difficult without those much needed funds.
Yeah, thanks for help. That's really great to hear just how positive the program was, and really sad to hear that y'all are now counting pennies just to honor the contracts that y'all have already made. The child care component of LFS was going to be new, and it was going to allow child care providers to have incentive dollars to procure food from farmers in their communities. As a provider, how are you looking forward to the possibility of these new funds to support farmers to serve, our youngest kids? And yeah, just would love to hear more.
Well, for us, anything to bring the community, to bring to reality to children that foods actually grow from somewhere. Some children don't know that the chicken in Kentucky Fried Chicken is live chicken. They can't relate to that. So having those farmers come by, sometimes talk to the children, work with them. It's sad to think that instead of growing, we're scaling down, because now we're not going to be able to purchase, to go directly to those people, bring them in where they actually interact with the children and then actually purchase from them. So it's going to be very difficult to continue to do the things that we're building on.
Yeah, thank you so much. And maybe just go ahead, Sandy, please.
Can I just add one thing, to kind of piggyback on what Lindsay and Ada are both talking about? The supply chain assistance grant money was really important too. So like when you were talking, we did in Virginia, we held back 10% for food hubs. And all this infrastructure, not only in our program, but through LFS and all these other programs, all this infrastructure has been developed to make it easier to procure local products from local farmers. And so when you flatten out that value chain and make it easier to get these products, we've worked on so much of that. And now to scale that back is devastating to farmers, to the education process, into school nutrition programs. I would just strongly encourage, wherever people can, continue to utilize that infrastructure to the best of your ability. And this is really where I think support is going to need to come through advocating through legislators, through your local communities, through philanthropists and corporations. Somebody needs to help step in to fill some of these gaps. And really, it should just be reinstated. That's the bottom line. But in the interim, people really need to understand that these food hubs and the local farmers have really stepped up and made it very viable. And to cut off their livelihood is particularly impactful in the rural communities also, because you're giving them a double whammy. You're taking the farmers' income, and then you're not feeding children. I mean, come on, makes no sense.
Yeah, no, those are really great points, and thanks for raising those, Sandy. Lindsay, last question, maybe 1 minute. There's a lot of talk about, health right now. And with the cut of LFS CC, will this lead to more resilience on ultra processed foods or less nutritious foods at the lowest, because those are low cost foods?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. Operators of school meal programs, like myself, that are faced with, we submitted for over $100,000 of LFS just so far this school year. So next year we were planning $250,000 in our local produce purchases. So decisions, unfortunately, yeah, are going to have to be made in terms of, I mean, for us, take our lettuce, right? We're getting butter lettuce over 500 pounds a week from a local farm. It's better quality, it's better nutritional value. Our kids prefer it, our staff prefers it. That's the other beauty part of this is, we were getting chopped romaine and our staff is like, we don't want that anymore. We like, the whole butter lettuce, even though they have to chop it. And yes, it takes more labor. So that to me, again, is that full circle win when it's not just knowing we're providing a better quality product, we're supporting our local farmers and economy, we're providing better quality ingredients to our students. Our staff preparing the food want those ingredients because they are better quality and they see the difference and they don't mind taking the extra production step to process that lettuce. So those are decisions that we are going to be faced with just in that example, right? Do we need to go back to the chopped 5-pound bag of, lettuce instead of a beautiful fresh butter lettuce head that we're getting because of, right, those funds that aren't available. And in the current situation of reimbursement rates for our programs, I'm 100% CEP. I'm at the 100% reimbursement for free. So yeah, I get $4.54 for every lunch meal. That's to provide 2 ounces of whole grain, 2 ounces of meat, a cup of fruit, a cup of vegetable, and 8 ounces of fluid milk. Chop off $2 for labor, I'm left with $2.54 to provide a wholesome quality meal. So it does have a direct impact, on decisions that we're going to have to make with menu items, frequency of things, all of that. So we're definitely having to assess and make, tough decisions. And it's highly unfortunate to see, like we've all said, this wonderful momentum. Your graph showed it in terms of where we're going with the movement. And so it is going to take people like all of you here on this webinar advocating for these programs and the impacts that it does have and the good that it does. And tying it in, right, to as Sandy has already mentioned, like it's really hard as an operator of these child nutrition programs that are federally funded to understand how you can't see the connection between agriculture and nutrition and local foods and school meals. Like it just doesn't make any sense in terms of the spirit of what we're trying to do every day with these programs and impacting children.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, Sandy and Adeze. I think we have a few minutes to answer a couple questions from attendees. Because my colleague Cassandra is gonna help us out. I don't have the chat pulled up, but if you feel like raising your hand and coming off mute, feel free to as well.
Yeah, I have a few quick questions, and maybe these were responded to in the chat, but just to do it out loud. Is there any insight into where the fresh fruit and vegetable program stands?
No.
Short answer.
We don't know. I mean, it's not in the proposals yet, so who knows?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I see we have Sergey. You're raising your hand.
It's actually Serge. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Serge Thomas, and I'm part of an organization called the Mid-Atlantic Food Resilience and Access Coalition, NAFRAC for short. My question to Ryan and to anyone on the panel is this. I come from a background of politics, campaigns, and elections, as well as working in this field. Do you see any pathway for any of us or any other organizations like ours to convince Republican members of Congress and the House to try to restore funding? Or is that, for all intents and purposes, a dead letter? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll pass it to, yeah, go ahead for it, Sandy.
I was going to say, yeah, go absolutely. Every letter, call, protest, joining with other forces, every student, anyone you can get that can advocate for this. Nothing's ever a done deal in politics, right? So my suggestion, and you all at National Farm to School Network have probably some insight too, is to advocate and with everyone internally within your own organizations, but clearly externally with all of your legislators and looking for your partners, farmers. I know that the International Fresh Produce Association, they're hugely impacted with these tariffs and everything else that's going on because they can't always get everything from, we can't feed our own country. We've really got to work on getting these crops grown. And if we have to import, we have to. But everyone's involved. It impacts everybody.
And I'll just chime in, obviously, without getting too political, but I think we've all articulated, you can easily connect all of this to MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. I don't know how much more the nutritional quality of school meals, local farms, local produce, local foods, all of agriculture, all of these connections that we've talked about throughout this webinar tie directly to making America healthy again. So I think I've seen some things in the chat about RFK's, proposals. This all easily ties right into that. So again, I think it's just a matter of educating and continuing to advocate how these programs work and the impacts that they have on the health benefits of our future.
And I think a lot of people don't quite understand the impact all these rules and policies are having on the grassroots, on the bottom line of which is growing our children even to become better citizens and contributing citizens. So you can't take away these things from them from childhood. Instead of investing in them, we're trying to go back to 100 years ago, less than more than that. It's important that we talk to the local groups, the different people we know, whether Republican or Democrats. They must have a way of looking at the total package.
Thank you all for those responses. Thank you, Serge, for posing such an important question at the moment. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. I see a couple of hands raised. I'll pass it over to Betty.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the content today. I'm coming to you from Lodi, California, Northern California. And I put quite a few things on the chat. SNA has some fabulous resources that are super easy and accessible to use. And my question for the panel is, what are you following to keep up with this policy news cycle? I know there's a lot of confusion with all things that are going on. I just heard from Patty Montague last week. She had some positive news to share with the possible opportunities to bring back the Keep Kids Fed Act and actually restore it beyond what we asked of 35 cents for lunch and 15 cents for breakfast. Yeah, what are you guys following? I'm just really looking to get into action over here.
I will just say, I think what you're saying, Dr. Crocker, is it is a challenge, right? I think in talking to different organizations, associations, state agencies, other colleagues, right? I think that's been the challenge, is trying to stay on top of the, daily, changes or different, not having clear updates in terms of, so my strategy has just been, School Nutrition Association, for sure. Also just been being in touch with our state agency, other directors, colleagues, other organizations such as, this one. I think everybody's just trying to come together and share information, because often we're not getting necessarily, or it's constantly changing. So I think that's one of the harder parts right now, is just trying to navigate the information and what is accurate, or what's, what we can go off of, and waiting till we get official guidance or clarification. So that's been my strategy, is kind of a variety of just everybody coming together to try to share what we know.
I'm also hoping that ACTA has some strong talking points on this next month.
Yeah, one of the challenges USDA's hands have been tied, FNS and AMS, in communicating with state agencies. So for states that have an administration that is supportive, you're more likely to get help from them than the other ones that have been issued gag orders, like Virginia, quite frankly. So it's more challenging, although the state agencies are trying to help where they can in getting resources and communications out to folks. Yeah, hopefully ACTA will have some additional information.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that people need to really advocate, both at the state and federal level, because the state level has an impact also, but to advocate to protect the cycle. Because if CEP goes to 60% and you're able to protect that cycle, you'll be able to stay in the cycle you're in for the duration of that cycle. So that could be 3 years, and in 3 years, voila, we have a different scenario. So just things to think about.
Thank you all for those
And
responses for that.
a
Oh, go
lot
ahead.
of
Go ahead,
people,
Adeze. Sorry.
a lot of people were discouraged with the cuts and all this coming up, and somebody like me tend to withdraw. But the most important thing is that we can't step back. We must continue to advocate. We must come up front and speak out where we can, so that somebody somewhere will hear.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And I do want to respect folks' time. We're already a minute over. So just thank you all for your questions. If you have more questions, I'm going to share my email in the final slide. And so please reach out and we're happy to pass these on. Again, you can always go on to NFSN's website, sign up for our newsletters. They've been going out very frequently. We have a weekly newsletter, become a partner. Also, be sure to check out our blog. We are keeping up-to-date information there so you can learn more. And following this, we will be sharing more information to all registrants of this webinar. And with that, we would love to know if you're being impacted by this. We currently have a survey. We would love for you to complete it. Again, you can continue to ask questions, brainstorm, talk through these ideas together. We are a movement. We are in this together. And again, reach out to us with questions and or ideas or how to share stories on how these changes affect you. So again, thank you all so much. Thank you, Sandy, Adeze, Lindsay, everybody here on this call, everybody who's doing this work on the ground. It's real, it's powerful, it's common sense, it's for the common good. We're so glad to be in this work together with you. Feel free to reach out. My email is here. You can also go to NFSN website, farmtoschool.org, and connect with us there. So I hope you all have a beautiful day and please take care.